Welcome back, viewers at home. You're still tuned in right here on INX Prime Channel 345. Now, welcome to Rising Entrepreneurs, where we spotlight the next generation of business innovators making their mark. Today, we're excited to feature Keith Malcolm Adams, the creative force behind Falcon Adams Clothing. Now, Keith has carved out a niche with his trendy and stylish winter wear collection, featuring everything from hoodies and sweatpants to crew necks, track pants, t-shirts, and even a limited edition leather two-piece. I believe you're wearing the two-piece right now. Now, the store is based in Melville, Johannesburg, and a thriving online presence. Keith is set to take the fashion world by storm. Keith, welcome to Prime Live, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we all hear about inspirational stories, and I think it will be quite, not so fruitful if we don't ask on how you started your brand. Can you give us a bit of a backstory on what led you to start your brand, as well as how you came up with the naming as well?
Okay. Growing up, I didn't have much fun with my parents, and it had a lot of ups and downs. My parents divorced, and I was at a point where I had to stay with my grandmother, and since when your parents are divorced, they just have their own lives and it's now separate, and you're the only child. So it got to a point where I used to see other kids. They would dress up nicely, you see, during the festivals like Christmas. You know how it goes on Christmas. They're dressing nicely, and since I'm the other child, I don't have means to get certain clothes, certain trendy clothes at that point in time. So it pushed me to a point where I'm like, okay, if I make it, if I get to a certain point, if anything, I don't want to lack clothes. I don't want to lack. I don't want to feel like I'm left behind. That was the motive, and so it went on with me liking fashion and looking at those trending fashions and getting a little ideas here and there. Besides that, I actually went into modeling.
Oh, okay.
Into modeling. So that's how I actually saw other brands, how they operated. I'm like to myself, okay, if these other brands, they operate like this, and they actually need models, people like me, who has a certain following on Instagram, for them to get to a certain point where they are publishing their whole brand and all the stuff, I'm like, I can actually do it too. Because either way, if I have clothes and I see someone who's not able to get clothes, I can help through the store. Because we have rejects at the store.
Okay.
We have certain goods that we can say these ones they are no longer in this period of time we're not selling them. Yeah, we can give out those. So that was the other push.
This is quite a very beautiful story, because usually I think people wait for them to hit those mark in terms of profits to start considering, the likes of donations and the likes. But seeing that even in your early beginnings, you are sort of touching back to your background and ensuring that it's a constant reminder that you don't want any other kid feeling left out, especially we are a generation of, looking nice, and also that gives a feeling of feeling nice. Now, I want to know particularly, because with most fashion brands, it's all about, being versatile. I mean, considering the seasons, considering the trends and the likes. But for you, you're particularly focused on the winter season, and I think your brand speaks to it producing clothing for the winter season. Can you expand on that, on why that's the reason?
Okay, this had a lot with when I went back to the drawing board, when I started the whole thing, I sat down with myself and I saw that even if it's not winter, we look at our South African seasons. Even if it's not winter, most of the time it's cold. That's what I first looked at. And even at some point in time, you're going to need a hoodie more than you need a vest.
Oh.
I actually looked into it like that. So it got to a point where I'm like, okay, even with me, my style, I was into those 2K baggy things and all that stuff. So I got to a point where I'm like, okay, if I can provide winter only, basically, if it's winter, which means people just going to focus on those clothes that are winter, they were not going to look for somewhere else for winter things. So that's what I started from. Of course, now we're expanding to t-shirts like the one that I'm wearing right now.
Yeah.
It's more of okay, let's test this, how it's going to work. Let's test this, how it's going to work. But we measuring those winter stuff.
So Speaking on future projections, if I were to ask you, where is Falcon headed in the near future? Would you say it will feature different, items to the list, or it's a matter of still sticking to the winter theme?
The expansion already started.
Oh, okay.
That's the thing. And I can say, in terms of like producing more, I feel like I have to actually know what I'm after now. I have to go back to the drawing board. But as for now, the winter is actually doing, I think, making sales a little bit. We're actually getting where we have to be.
That's nice. And I think one thing I really am taking from you is the drawing board, which means you always look into your research, every data to ensure that your growth is aligned with where you're headed and the niche that you're supplying to. I want to know, in terms of your growth as well as, you're targeting your customer base, what strategies did you have to, implement or leverage to attain that?
Okay. In terms of research, it started with those brands that I actually like. There are some major brands that I actually look at and I say, one day I wish mine can reach this point. So I actually look at their backgrounds. It's like this other time I was even watching a documentary for Versace. How it started, how it all got to that point. And from that point, you pick up a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. Of course, nothing came even Louis Vuitton didn't walk up that big. It had to start somewhere. So when I get to that point on the drawing board, that's when I ask myself, okay, if I'm doing this, let me look at it from a point of how is it going to help me in the next 5-10 years. It's actually, if I was, let's for example, right, I'm in business. I start producing masks for COVID. Right? It means that at a certain point in time, mask won't be needed. Look at right now. If I was in a business where my clothing line had measuring in mask only, right now I'll be out of business. You see?
True.
So that's what I also go through to the drawing board. That's why I get it all drafted.
So in closing, for viewers who want to start businesses and are also having businesses but they're struggling, what advice would you give to them? Because you've made good strides in your own field in fashion clothing and your own business, where you have an online presence, you have a store, and now you talk about being versatile in the items that you're providing. So in closing, what advice would you give to them?
Okay, when it comes to youngsters that have dreams, here's the thing. You feel it within you. You feel like this is the thing that I want to do. I don't think you have to listen to those external minds that are coming from other people. They're telling you okay, this is the thing, you can't do it this way. You have to first have this and this and this. If I waited for a perfect time, there was never going to be a perfect time. So to those who want to be in a clothing brand, some of the tips: go on the drawing board, look at the fabrics, just study everything. Look at the fabrics, look at how you're going to distribute it, look at how it's going to perform online. Are you marketing it? Where is it based? All that stuff, and the naming, how you're going to go about it.
Keith, thank you so much, for sharing your insight on how you actually are successful and sharing with other viewers on how they can also be successful. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Viewers at home, that was Keith Malcolm Adams sharing in, some of his experiences and insight on how he is able to still run a business and still flourish and still, produce products that speak to his customer base.